like you're in your mid-30s, you're like, I'm going to be fine. And then all of a sudden I was entirely isolated. I was just really a mess of anxiety. I was supposed to start private practice the day after my diagnosis. Having stage 4 cancer essentially ended my career. You just can't give up and you can't surrender to it.
Cora was a social worker, ready to build her business when she was diagnosed with cancer. She quickly went from being a therapist to a stage 4 colorectal cancer patient who was struggling with her own mental health.
So mental health was something that I hadn't necessarily struggled with personally prior to my diagnosis. I think even going into my diagnosis prior to that, I had worked with kids with chronic illness and some adults with chronic illness. And you have kind of this intellectual idea of what it looks like to have a chronic illness, or what it looks like to experience depression or experience this kind of anxiety. And then it's very different when you're in it. And so I think I'm so thankful for all of the different people that have exposed themselves to mental health, that have processed their lives and their griefs, because all of that study kind of prepared me in some ways to be able to survive this diagnosis mentally and emotionally. And I think that's what I took from those kids as well. I worked with kids who had a lot of trauma for the most part, and you just see them survive. And there's like nothing better than that. It's just seeing them survive and make it through that kind of thing. And really that they're a big part of that story for me now, even though I don't work with them anymore. I was in graduate school, and I'd always been somebody who worked more than 40 hours a week, had gone to school and worked. And suddenly I was so tired that I was coming home and not eating and going to sleep. And I was losing weight unintentionally because of that, because I was just sleeping rather than eating. And so my fatigue, I think, was really the first thing that I noticed. And I thought that it was probably some burnout, because I'd been in this heavy trauma environment for years. As I kind of switched it to different jobs, like that fatigue just kept following me. And that's really what I noticed first. And I kind of went through a process with my doctor of doing even stuff for depression, even though I didn't have any of the other symptoms other than fatigue, thyroid testing constantly, just different things, and everything came back normal. But then I think it was December of 2018, I had like blood and mucus that I was passing. And so that was kind of a big worry immediately. And really, I think we just all thought like it was probably IBS or something like that, you know. And so I ended up getting scheduled for a colonoscopy. When they kind of woke me up from the colonoscopy, my mom was there with me, and the doctor walked in and he's like, you know, I'm really surprised, but it looks like you have cancer, and kind of gave us a picture of the tumor. And he's like, you know, we can't say 100% that it's cancer until we get the biopsy back. But that was like a Thursday. And by Monday, I was in for a different type of procedure to test staging, and talking to an oncologist, and the biopsy was back that confirmed it was what we thought at that time was stage 2 colon cancer. I think for the most part, it was just shock. I don't even think I cried. My mom, I don't think, cried right then. I think we were just all in a lot of shock. And my stepdad picked us up from the hospital. And when we got in the car, he asked how things went. And, you know, I just said I have cancer, and he thought I was joking. You know, he thought it was a joke because we were just kind of very calm and in shock in that moment. But then when I got home, I cried probably for about 24 hours, I think. I was just really a mess of anxiety. I was supposed to start private practice the day after my diagnosis. And I had left the hospital I was working at, and I had keys to my new office. And I was like, I'm doing this thing on Thursday, and then on Friday, I'm signing into my new office space. And instead, it was just a morning of texting people. I couldn't call anybody. And I feel bad about that. You know, it's hard to break that kind of news by text, but I couldn't even say it for probably a long time afterwards. I got diagnosed initially as stage 2, And my mindset or my mind frame then was like, I have a career I love, like cancer is going to be like this little blip of my life. And my whole goal was just to kind of like put it behind me. I had chemo and then radiation with like an oral chemo pill for a month. And then I had a major kind of open surgery with a temporary ileostomy. And I had that for 3 months and then had it reversed. So it was almost like exactly a year from the time I was diagnosed, going through all of those steps to the time that I had my ileostomy reversed. I rang the bell, like we celebrated, like it was an ED. I really felt good too. Again, like I have felt better than I had in years, right about that summer. It was like the summer that I kind of finished everything. I felt really good. And then by like the end of summer and early fall, I was feeling bad again and like fatigued again. And so it was about 6 months. We kind of celebrated me being cancer free and my ileostomy reversal and all that stuff before the stage 4 cancer came up. I think it was about halfway through my first treatment plan that like a radiologist noted a spot on my liver the first time. But my oncologist was like, it's been there before. And so none of those spots grew, and we really thought they were just like these things, like whatever. And so it was really after I had been cleared of treatment, we thought I was good. We were monitoring me really close because of that, those spots on my liver and lungs. Again, I had started like a new job at a treatment facility, was really excited. And within a couple of weeks, the oncologist was calling me and like, oh, now these spots are growing. And it's actually, they really thought it wasn't cancer, and it is. It wasn't until I got diagnosed with like stage 4 cancer that I started like posting on TikTok some of the stuff, or recording even some of my grief.
Okay, day 13 of continuing a little bit of a grief journey, journaling by reading quotes and things that I wrote down out of Tuesdays with Maury.
Really, the reason I started a TikTok channel was to kind of analyze my own grief from that like psychology perspective, but also I haven't wanted to release that because it is painful for people like my family members. My mom is the person I want to protect most.
I'm kind of whispering because I don't want anybody to know how sad I am, because we're supposed to be happy right now.
I think with the stage 4 cancer, one of the situations I knew is that I already knew that there were some bad statistics about stage 4 colorectal cancer out there. And so I didn't want to hear any statistics. I just wanted to focus on what was the best treatment plan and doing the best that I could to survive that treatment plan. But it was a really dark time. I mean, it was a lot of crying. It was a lot of friends and family around. Talking to my boss, having to say goodbye to all these kids at work again, and leaving that. Just kind of a time of grief. But still, at that point, my mind was set on living and like this still being temporary. So like it was almost like that shock all over again of like, I'm shocked and now I'm going to cry a lot, but now my mind is going to be focused on the future and like not the potential that I won't recover from this. So second line of chemo was really difficult compared to the first line of chemo. And I got very, very sick off of it. I don't think I was nervous about doing chemo again. Like I did have a lot of weird side effects on my first round of chemo, but it was definitely, out of all of the things I went through, was the most manageable out of that 3-pronged treatment I had. I would have rather had the chemo again over the radiation or surgery from that first time. And so I went into the chemo thinking like, okay, I did this once before. It's a different type of chemo, and I'm going to be annoyed with having to keep this bag on me for a couple of days and that kind of stuff, but I'm going to, survive it. And I did, but it definitely took a much harder toll on me. And we were in the middle of COVID that time. And so I had to go to chemo by myself, which was not something I had ever done before. I always had a whole group of people around me. And then I had to come home and be by myself because everybody was scared of getting me sick because I was so sick on that particular chemo. And I think that's really where I started struggling some with actual mental health.
This doctor just made it really clear. Oh my goodness. Coming back. I'm sorry, I thought I was going to be happy. I'm not.
I think so often we think of like we can build ourselves up and we can hold ourselves up through this kind of thing. And especially if you're somebody who's been independent your whole life and like you're in your mid 30s, you're like, I'm going to be fine. And then all of a sudden I was entirely isolated and I had people on the phone and different things, but it just wasn't the same. My dogs were always kind of the somebody who kept me not just emotionally kind of giving me some of the things that I needed, but also just physically. Like I have to walk them every day. I have to go out and get sunshine every day. They keep me kind of interested in the world and that kind of stuff. And even when some days I'm having a very bad physical day, like I can force myself to go and do those things that are things that I need to be doing for myself because of them. So I've really enjoyed having them there. And during COVID were a very nice blessing to have.
This month is Colorectal Awareness Month, and I was diagnosed with colorectal cancer on March 7th of 2019.
Now I'm at my 6th recurrence. I've been really lucky to have made it through 6 years of colon cancer. When I was originally stage 4, the plan was for me to be on chemo for the rest of my life. And I took a break from that because I didn't know if I was going to make that choice to be on chemo for life. And through that 6 years, like so many things have been developed in the medical field. The ctDNA test has been developed. I got a positive ctDNA test in October, but my CT scan was clear, like they can't find a tumor. So they can tell that a tumor is setting up somewhere in my body. They just can't find it yet. But it wasn't available when I first got diagnosed. And these are some of the things that keep me hopeful. And so I just keep myself focused on all of these things that people are doing. My mom says one foot in front of the other a lot when we're talking about my story. And so like, I'm just going to keep on like putting a next step in front of me. I think for me, and one of my takeaways in mental health and dealing with really hard parts of life are that you really have to reach out and find a support system. And I was lucky enough to already have a really great support system, but I also had to keep looking for new resources as things progressed for me. So another really helpful thing I've found is that I signed up for a group called the Project Athena Foundation, and they do kind of an outdoor training for people who've survived medical trauma. And so there's this like group of people that I have, trainers and different people who have been through all kinds of things. That's who I turn to. This summer, I got kicked off an immunotherapy trial because my body couldn't handle it. And it was really devastating to me because we were very hopeful that it might give me like some time cancer-free. And the first person like I texted was the coach of that group. Like, can you just like send me some crappy, athletic story about going forward even through loss, and like even if it's cheesy, even if it's stupid, like that's what I need this morning, because I know you guys have all gone through that kind of thing. What they sent me was that I was going to be signed back up to rejoin them on the marathon that I couldn't join because of the immunotherapy trial. And so instead it was just an invitation to California to go on the marathon that I had been pulled from because of my medical condition. It was still that mindset of like, okay, well, you got kicked off of that yesterday. Today, you can go back to marathon training. So I went. I trained twice for this marathon, and both years my cancer came back like right at the end. And I went to California. I was super sick. And I'm still swollen from steroids because my kidney and liver kind of went into failure at the immunotherapy. And so I went with my team. I did 10 miles, I think, before I started just vomiting everywhere, and they had to take me back to the hotel for a couple of hours. But I was able to rejoin them at the finish line. And honestly, 10 miles, I think, is good enough, for somebody dealing with cancer at that point. So
this is me at mile 12 of my 16-mile qualifying hike after just completing my 1,200-foot elevation gain. And I'm almost all downhill now and just 4 miles. So I think I'm gonna make it today.
I think I do notice a change in myself. And one of the biggest changes, I guess, is just that some of that career driven or forward kind of thinking that I had prior to my cancer diagnosis, as much as it was a good thing, also might have shortchanged some of my relationships in life. And so I think that cancer has really slowed me down in different ways that have been helpful when it comes to making memories. That's my focus. I have just so many pictures, and my friends now and family now know that if they go somewhere with me, I'm going to make them probably do something really silly for a photo shoot. I do that for me, but also for them. I never thought about me leaving them behind and them having to grieve me, and now that's something that I really think about. I think about what I'm going to leave them, and that's been impactful in a really wonderful way.
Cora, you are an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing your story to help others. If you were moved by Cora's story, we've queued up another story for you right here on your screen. Also, be sure to subscribe to us here at The Patient Story right here so you can stay up to date on all of our latest videos.